Pranam Swamiji.
Namaskar.
Namaste to everyone. We at Advaita Academy welcome Swamiji and you all to this 1 month long Oneness Festival, a global celebration of Adi Shankaracharya ji. In this session, we have a talk by Swami Sarvapriyananda ji, followed by a Q&A, and then a video session by Beat Clifford ji on Swami Dayananda Saraswati ji. Please stay back for both. For the new attendees, we have 4 different sessions every day, 2 in the morning at 6 a.m. IST, the evening at 6 p.m. IST. Swami Sarvapriyananda ji has been appointed as Minister and Spiritual Leader of the Vedanta Society of New York and assumed his duties there on January 6, 2017. He is a Nagral Fellow for 2019-20 at Harvard Divinity School. Prior to this, he served as Assistant Minister of the Vedanta Society of Southern California for 13 months. Swamiji joined the Ramakrishna Mutt and Mission in 1994 and received sannyas in 2004. Before being posted to the VSSC's Hollywood Temple, Swamiji served as Acharya, as a teacher of the Monastic Probationers Training Center at Belur Mutt. Swamiji has served the Ramakrishna Mutt and Mission in various capacities, including being the Vice Principal of the Deogarh Vidyapith Higher Secondary School and as Principal of the Shikshana Mandir Teacher Education College in Belur Mutt. And he was also the first Registrar of the Vivekananda University at Belur Mutt. Before Swamiji starts his talk, I'd like to let you know that please post your comments and questions in the chat box below. And after Swamiji's talk, we'll pick up a few questions for him to answer. I now humbly request Swamiji to please start the discourse on Shankaracharya ji. Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha.
Om Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavadvyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Namaskar, everybody. I congratulate the Indic Academy and Advaita Academy for organizing this month-long celebration of Adi Shankaracharya, this global festival of oneness. And I am privileged to be here, to be part of it. Today, I just wanted to talk in general about the contributions of Adi Shankaracharya. I am a monk of the Ramakrishna order. And if I look at myself, I can see how much I owe in what I am today and what I am doing presently, how much I owe to Adi Shankaracharya. So our order, as you know, Sri Ramakrishna was, his sannyasa guru was Totapuri, who was a monk of a part of the Puri Sampradaya, one of the Dashnami, the 10 orders of monks, which can be traced back to Adi Shankaracharya. And so Sri Ramakrishna was part of this monastic tradition. Swami Vivekananda was part of this monastic tradition, and all of us in the Ramakrishna Mutt and Mission, we are part of the 10 orders of monks started by Adi Shankaracharya. In fact, I can share a humorous incident about this. Many years ago, about I would say about 16 years ago, I, as a new monk, newly ordained sannyasi, I was in the Himalayas in Gangotri, and I met a Naga sannyasi, and it was just near Suraj Kunda in Gangotri, and so I went to meet him. This Naga sannyasi was sitting just near there's an old wooden bridge there. He was sitting on in one corner, and it was quite cold actually. But he was dressed only in a loincloth and with he had a little fire going. I asked him, "What's your name? Aapka kya naam hai? What's your name?" And he said, "Purnamgiri." Or "Tera kya naam hai? What's your name?" I said, the way we generally say it, Swami Sarvapriyananda. And he said, Sarvapriyananda, puri kaha gaya? Sabji ke saath kha gaya? So if you are Sarvapriyananda, you must be of the Puri Sampradaya. He understood that I belong to the Ramakrishna order, and he knew that we are part of the Puri Sampradaya. And so what happened to the Puri? You're supposed to say the whole thing, Sarvapriyananda Puri. So I said, what happened to the Puri? Did you eat it with your sabji? So that was a pun. And then I said, no, I'm sorry, Sarvapriyananda Puri. And he, is glaring at me. He said, Babu ban gaya hai. You've become a Babu, a gentleman. So this is humorous, but it shows. He, in fact, later told me, "Are tu to apna hi aadmi hai. You belong to our fold." I said, "How is that?" Dekh, he said, "See, Totapuri ka chela Ramakrishna, और Ramakrishna ka chela Vivekananda, और Vivekananda ka chela tu hai." So he said, Totapuri was the guru of Ramakrishna, Ramakrishna was the guru of, or Vivekananda was the disciple of Ramakrishna, and you are the disciple of Vivekananda. So you belong to the same order as Totapuri, and he is one of the 10 orders of monks. So this Swami, this sadhu I was speaking with, was Purnam Giri. So Giri is one of those 10 orders, Giri and Bharati and Saraswati and Puri. Not only that our monastic tradition is part of the tradition started by Adi Shankaracharya, but also the philosophy that I believe in, that I follow and I teach, and the foundational philosophy of our spiritual life is Advaita Vedanta. It's the philosophy of Shankaracharya. And so his contribution, not only to me personally, to our Ramakrishna order, to Hinduism in general, and to the world at large, is unparalleled. When I think about the philosophy of Adi Shankaracharya, which is what I shall talk about today, it is unparalleled in its in how profound it is and how clear it is. Often a term is used to describe the teachings of Shankaracharya, prasanna gambhira. Prasanna means lucid, clear, and gambhira means profound. Profound and yet very clear, an amazing clarity. Swami Vivekananda said more than 100 years ago here in this country, in fact, in this city itself, in New York, he said, what is it that Vedanta can give to the modern world in 100 years ago? One of the things he said was that it's a rational religion, a religion that is rational and scientific. He met some of the leading intellectuals of that time, William James at Harvard. In fact, Swami Vivekananda gave a talk to some of the leading philosophers at Harvard University. The great scientist Nikola Tesla, who became fascinated with Vivekananda. Vivekananda said that the leading intellects which he has met in the West at that time, the only religion that can satisfy them is the religion based on Vedanta, and he meant Advaita Vedanta by that. Today, 100 years later, you might be interested to know that when religion is under attack, and there are these so-called militant atheists, Christopher Hitchens, who has passed away now, Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, and Daniel Dennett, and they mount a scientific, materialistic attack on religion. And the religion based on faith cannot really stand up to this kind of criticism. If you look at the videos which are openly available on YouTube, the many debates between, say, Sam Harris or Christopher Hitchens on one side, and on the other side, somebody representing some religion, maybe Christian theologians or Jewish rabbis. Just about always, if you take a neutral view of it, it's usually the person who is speaking up for religion who comes off worse. The reason is, when you try to defend something that is based basically on faith, on belief, against an attack based entirely on reason and experience, then it's very difficult and you're likely to lose the debate. Now, recently, a book has been written, and one interesting thing is, if you're an Advaitin, when you listen to those debates, you're quite comfortable with it. All those attacks against religion are basically against religion based on faith. And from an Advaitic perspective, none of those attacks, none of those charges leveled against religion have an effect on Advaita Vedanta. When you listen to them, you know the answers. Advaita is absolutely unaffected by that. Recently, there was a book by David Bentley Hart, The Experience of God as Being and Consciousness and Bliss, I think, is something like that. David Bentley Hart. He's a Christian theologian, and he has written a reply to these militant atheists. And the reply is based on Vedanta. If you look at the book, the chapters of the book, the chapters are Sat, Chit, Ananda, being, consciousness, bliss. And of course, David Bentley Hart, I have not met him, but one of the professors at Harvard told me that he is a very quarrelsome person. That means he really likes debating. He's a very sharp debater. David Bentley Hart, he says that these ideas of God as being, as awareness, are there in all the great religious traditions of the world, in Judaism, in Christianity, in Islam. But he says, most clearly in the Vedanta of Hinduism, he says. And that's why he has taken the term Sat, Chit, and Ananda. I believe that the religions of the world are all true and they are valid paths to God realization. But let me put this out very clearly. They are all true because at root, at the core, they have in some form or the other these core Vedantic ideas. Without these Vedantic ideas of the identity of God and man, of the ultimate reality as being and awareness and infinity, Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma, without these, religion becomes superstition. Religion cannot stand in the modern age. And the only way religion can stand is when you refer back to these ideas. Now, these ideas are there in the Upanishads. They are there in the Vedas. But that was not enough. A few months ago at the Widener Library in Harvard, which is one of the largest academic library in the world, I came across this rare text. It's a Buddhist text written by a great Buddhist philosopher, Bhava Viveka, who lived about 300, 400 years before Shankara. He was a follower of Nagarjuna. And in this book, there's one chapter where he criticizes the two Hindu systems, Sankhya and Vedanta. It's very interesting to see what he presents Vedanta as. So he presents Vedanta, the Vedanta that he quotes, Bhava Viveka, few hundred years before Shankara, when he's trying to refute Vedanta. What he quotes as Vedanta are some excerpts from the Vedas, from the Samhitas, from the Purusha Suktam, from some of the Upanishads, and then he refutes them. He says this is an incoherent philosophy. And really, if you see just that, those are intuitive truths. They are spiritual truths, no doubt, but they are not presented they're not logically argued out. They are not presented, the connecting rational links are not expressly brought out. And so it was very easy for the early Buddhist philosophers to dismiss Vedanta. What happened was Gaudapada Acharya and then Adi Shankaracharya. So Adi Shankaracharya especially, he presented Vedanta as this coherent system of thought with a neatly, logically argued out, very clear, very direct kind of teaching. This diverse varieties of spiritual insights spread across the Upanishads. He wove them beautifully into a wonderful system. So this is what Adi Shankaracharya does. Couple of 300 or 400 years after this Bhava Viveka. One of our great Swamis, Swami Tapasyanandaji, who was the vice president of the Ramakrishna order, and he was the head of the Ramakrishna, he was in the Ramakrishna Mutt in Chennai, long before my time. But I've heard from senior monks that he used to say, Shankara inherited two great dilapidated castles. One is that late Buddhism, which was already in decline in India at that time. And the other one is the great edifice of Purva Mimamsa. Purva Mimamsa is a philosophical system and a hermeneutical system. Hermeneutical means interpretation of texts. So it's a system based on the karma kanda of the Vedas, the portions dealing with rituals and meditations. And the great philosopher Kumarila Bhatta, whom Shankaracharya met. There's a wonderful story about it, how Kumarila Bhatta was in his last day. He was sitting on the Tushagni, and he was about to give up his body, but Shankaracharya came to him and presented his this Brahma Sutra Bhashya. And it seems that Kumarila Bhatta said that I don't have time to respond to this, but you should go to Mandana Mishra, who is a worthy successor to me, and he will give you a response. And we all know how Shankara goes to Mandana Mishra, and there's a great debate. And one theory is that Mandana Mishra himself becomes Shankara's disciple, Sureshwaracharya. But anyway, the whole point is Shankaracharya engaged this Purva Mimamsa. Purva Mimamsa, the problem was Purva Mimamsa, which did a wonderful job of expounding the Vedas and developing a system of hermeneutics by which you can understand the Vedic texts. But it said all of Vedas are connected to rituals. Amnayasya kriyarthatvat anarthakyam tad atadarthanam. Because the Shruti, the Vedic texts, are all meant for some ritualistic action. Those which, if you find any text which is not meant for any action, for ritualistic action, they become useless. And so the Upanishads, which talked about the real nature of the self, so they were not considered as prescribing an action. So they were taken up as the Purva Mimamsa said that they really don't mean to talk about the real nature of the self, but they actually mean, they are actually arthavada, eulogistic statements which are ancillary to the rituals. Somehow you have to connect them to rituals. And here, there's a reason why I'm saying this. Here comes Shankaracharya, and he takes on this powerful system of thought. He's in the Isha Upanishad, Bhashya, in his commentary on the Isha Upanishad, he starts off, Ishavasya Mityadayo Mantraha Na Karmasu Viniyuktaha. A stunning opening to the Isha Upanishad Bhashya. Isha Upanishad, is a part of the Shukla Yajurveda. There are 40 chapters in the Sanghita, Shukla Yajurveda Sanghita, and the 40th chapter is the Isha Upanishad. Now imagine, 39 chapters of this collection of texts, 39 chapters are connected with some kind of ritual. And here is Shankaracharya coming and saying, yes, those 39 are your books to the Purva Mimamsaka. They are connected with rituals. But this 40th chapter belongs to us, to the Advaitins, to the Uttara Mimamsa, because it does not deal with rituals. You can see how this is just looking for trouble. Here is this young scholar saint, he was barely 16 years old, coming and challenging a most established orthodox system of thought and saying that from your most revered text, you can keep 39 chapters, but I'm pulling out the 40th chapter and saying, this is mine. So it's just asking for a fight. And in many of the commentaries of Adi Shankaracharya, you find this dialogue between the debate between the Purva Mimamsa system and the Uttara Mimamsa, the Vedanta, where Shankaracharya proves that the Upanishads are not connected, are not about action. They reveal the reality of the self, Atma Yathatmyam. And what is the reality of the self? That it is non-dual, Advaitam. It is infinite existence, consciousness, bliss. And once we realize this, Aham Brahmasmi, we realize I am Brahman, we are free of all sorrow, of all samsara. So this was the essential teaching. And you can imagine the kind of dialectics that went on. Shankaracharya was a master of using, in Shankara's works, we find that all the great thinkers of Indian philosophy, their contributions have been beautifully harmonized. The logic, the Nyaya of the Nyaya system, the hermeneutics of the Purva Mimamsa system, the idea of pure consciousness taken from the Sankhya, they're all integrated to explain the Upanishadic teachings. Even in yoga, for example. So what he does, Shankaracharya, is a classic example. He refutes the philosophy of yoga, which is dualistic, but says, but then the practices of yoga, which are helpful in concentration, they are welcome. Etena yoga pratyuktaha. By these arguments, which he presents against Sankhya, he says the yoga philosophy is also rejected, but the techniques of yoga are welcome for nididhyasana, for concentration. Similarly, so whatever is best in all the different philosophical systems, Shankara used them to compose his commentaries. So his master contribution was the commentaries on the Upanishads. These prasanna gambhira, lucid and profound commentaries. He wrote many, many works. By one list, I saw 154 works, bhashyas, prakaranas, hymns, stotras. But among them, most important are the Upanishad bhashyas, the commentaries on the Upanishads, the commentary on the Brahma Sutras, and the commentary, the bhashya on the Bhagavad Gita. So these three are the foundational texts of Advaita Vedanta: Upanishads, Brahma Sutra, and Bhagavad Gita. And the commentaries of Shankaracharya explain these. They present it in a very logical, very clear. To even today, if you read it, one can easily understand it and be enlightened. Even the Sanskrit is easy. I remember when I was a brahmachari many, many years ago, I always thought Shankaracharya must be difficult. I never really started. And one Swami once said, have you read the original commentaries of Adi Shankaracharya? I said, no, they are very difficult. I have not read it. And he looked at me in a surprised way and he said, difficult? No, it's, you have not tried it. That's why you think it's difficult. But so I was really taken back, and I thought that that I should, just give me a minute. I have a class going on. Sorry about that. So then I actually started reading the texts, and I found that, yes, the Sanskrit is very lucid. It's one Swami once told me that if you compare the language of Ramanujacharya and Shankaracharya, you will see Shankara's Sanskrit is so lucid and simple, and Ramanuja's Sanskrit is very sophisticated. It's very ornate. And the Swami joked, you see, Shankara was a schoolboy. He was 16 years old. And Ramanuja lived to the ripe old age of 120. Anyhow, that's humor. But it's also another thing, while we are on the topic, is Shankara becomes the standard for other teachers afterwards. Even the other schools of Vedanta, Ramanuja, Vishishtadvaita system, Madhvacharya's Dvaita Vedanta system, then the Vallabha's Shuddhadvaita, then Nimbarka's Dvaitadvaita system, the Achintya Bheda Veda of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, and so on. All the other great Vedanta schools who came afterwards, you see what they did was exactly like Shankaracharya. They wrote commentaries on the Upanishads, they wrote commentaries on the Brahma Sutras, commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita, and they developed the system by criticizing Shankara. So when you criticize somebody, whether you praise or criticize somebody, you recognize the importance of the person. So Shankara becomes like the benchmark for further development of Vedanta schools, whether in support of Shankara or in a different track, the Bhakti schools of Vedanta. One more thing that I wanted to, about the Upanishad commentaries, I just wanted to say this, that Adi Shankaracharya, he wrote commentaries on 10 Upanishads. The tradition tells us 11th is Shvetashvatara Upanishad. He wrote a commentary on Shvetashvatara, but many modern scholars doubt whether that is the commentary written by Adi Shankaracharya. Maybe some of the later Shankaracharyas wrote that commentary. I remember about 20 years ago, I still remember I was studying the Upanishads, the commentaries of Shankaracharya with one of my teachers, who was a great scholar. He passed away this year at the age of 106. So at that time, I remember this old Swami, he's sitting and teaching from the Shankara Bhashya and reading from the commentary of Shankaracharya on the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. And he says, and he's mumbling to himself, this is not by Adi Shankaracharya. So the Shvetashvatara Bhashya is a little doubtful, but the other 10 Upanishads are definitely the commentary of Shankaracharya. And they form the basis of what we today know as Advaita Vedanta. One more point, then we will open up for questions. Philosophically speaking, it is Shankaracharya's commentary on the Brahma Sutras, the Brahma Sutra Bhashya, which is his masterpiece. In fact, the tradition is you become an Acharya, the Acharya of a system, if you write a commentary on the Brahma Sutras. So Ramanujacharya is Acharya because he wrote a commentary on the Sri Bhashya, on the Brahma Sutras, and so on. So Shankaracharya's Bhashya is a masterpiece. The beginning of that commentary, which is known as Adhyasa Bhashya, which establishes superimposition. I remember the great philosopher, Professor J.N. Mohanty, who is equally a master of Eastern thought and Western thought, well trained in Navya Nyaya, in Vedanta. And then he went on to Germany after the Second World War and became an authority in the philosophy of Husserl, phenomenology. So this professor, he told me once that in all my study of philosophical texts of the East and the West, the most profound sentence I have ever come across is the opening sentence of the Adhyasa Bhashya. Most profound sentence in all the philosophical literature of East and West. The opening sentence, he meant Yushmad Asmat Pratyaya Gocharayo Vishaya Vishayino Tamak Prakashavad Viruddha Swabhavayo. That's the opening part of the first sentence. That sentence itself is a masterpiece. There's no time today, but if there are questions, we can go into it. The nature of consciousness. What is consciousness? And what is the nature of the object of consciousness? That is explained by Shankara's concept of Adhyasa. And that provides the key to his commentary on the Brahma Sutras. That why is it that knowledge can give us freedom? Why is it that the nature of our bondage is ignorance? That knowledge alone can remove ignorance. And if ignorance is the nature of bondage, then knowledge can give us freedom. And that ignorance is the nature of bondage. He establishes that in the Adhyasa Bhashya. Also establishes the real nature of consciousness, which is of great relevance today. When right here we have in New York, Professor David Chalmers, who is one of the leading philosophers of mind in the whole world, maybe the leading philosopher of mind in the whole world. He has brought up this problem of consciousness in a new form. He's calling it the hard problem of consciousness, where he says, how can consciousness be reduced to brain states, to neuronal activity? It cannot be reduced. That's his position. And I was at Harvard this last 8-9 months. One of the courses that I took was philosophy of mind. And it's so interesting to see in the modern philosophy of mind, the only question that the central question is that what is the relationship between consciousness and matter? And that's the question that Shankaracharya takes up and gives a very elegant solution. But I'll stop here And let's take questions. It seems that there are a lot of
Yes, Swamiji, a lot
comments.
of questions.
Yes.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful, lively, and humorous with so many stories. It's a very different facet of Swamiji that I'm seeing, and I'm loving it. Swamiji, I'll just group the questions because they're of a certain kind. The first group of questions would be how to talk to Hindus who on Advaita, because they're rejecting Advaita based on communism or other kinds of ideologies, especially in India. And similar question was how can we adopt or adapt Advaita in day-to-day life? And one of the similar questions was how to see Brahman everywhere when there's so much sorrow around us. So these are all one group of questions. Should we go into that first, and then I'll give it?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
How to talk about Advaita to people. In fact, I think it is actually easy to talk about Advaita, but it has to be put in a modern way. So you take up the questions which concern us. Like, for example, as I said, in the philosophy of mind, what is the nature of consciousness? How is it related to the brain, to the mind? How is the mind related to the brain? If you can talk about that. I found, for example, right here in NYU, New York University, at Harvard also, I found they are interested in the Advaitic perspective and also Buddhistic perspective. The reason is, if you come at it from a religious angle, they're not interested. But because Advaita talks not about some belief, some faith system, but about the questions about our life here and now, world and awareness, relationship between that, and how it can solve our problem. That's why they're interested. When you're talking to young people, especially, you should always keep in mind, in fact, by young people, anybody when you're talking to, keep in mind their prayojana. What do they want? So people want to overcome sorrow ultimately and attain fulfillment. And that's the whole goal of Vedanta. The whole goal of Vedanta is to show you how you can overcome suffering and attain peace and joy. They want something rational. And you should say that here is a system, probably the only system of spiritual philosophy in the world, which is not a belief system. Yeah. It's not a belief system. It's not even a system based on specific extraordinary mystical experiences, because that also can be doubted. But it's a way of investigating our present experience and looking into that and discovering the truth about ourselves. It's very rational, very, very logical. When you present it that way, and I have seen it works. I have seen many people, including Indians staying here in the United States, who are not interested in religion, not interested in Hinduism or religion at all. They became interested through Advaita. And when Advaita pulled them, and later on, they began to appreciate the other aspects of religion, of Hinduism also. Yes.
And the second group, Swamiji, is a question on what is Yoga Nidra? If Swamiji could elaborate on Yoga Nidra, Atma Vichara, beyond which is a blank state that the person is going through. So what is Turiyam and Adhyasa? To elaborate on Adhyasa.
Oh my God, there's so many.
We need the whole day.
Yeah, we need so many. But there are so many talks. I was seeing a wide range of talks in this month-long discussion, the Festival of Oneness. Many of these topics will come up.
Sure.
So very, very quickly then, Yoga Nidra itself is a technique from Hatha Yoga. It's a relaxation technique. But the Turiyam is the consciousness in itself, which appears or is experienced as waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. So if you count waking, dreaming, and deep sleep as 1, 2, 3, with respect to that, Turiyam is called fourth. Turiyam literally means fourth, but it's not the fourth. It is the one which appears as the 3. Yes.
Yes, Swamiji. So that is a Turiyam, and Adhyasa, Swamiji.
Adhyasa. So for that, you have to study the Adhyasa Bhashyam.
Okay. So.
But let me put it this way. Let me put it in a brief couple of minutes. See what Shankaracharya does in the first sentence. He tells you, look at our experience, all our experience in life, right now also, and whatever we have experienced in life and whatever we shall experience in life from now on is always of this subject-object nature. I experience this. So I'm experiencing a computer and a screen. You are experiencing seeing me and listening to my words. And this is how we experience. I, this, subject, object. And all experience has to be of this format. And Shankaracharya says, have you noticed that these two are very different? Subject and object. Yushmad asmat pratyaya gocharayo. Yushmad pratyaya means the content of the cognition of you or that. Why he says you is a different reason. And the content of the cognition of I. These two are very different. He says, Tama prakashavad viruddha svabhaya, just as different as light and darkness. What is light? You, the awareness. And that, when you say that, that includes not only the external world. We can always say, we call the external world that thing or this thing. But the body is also an object. It's also this body. And if you look at that, if you investigate further, thoughts are also objects. This thought, that thought, a happy thought, a sad thought, different thoughts. Understanding, buddhi is also an object. You can objectify it. Memory is also an object. I remember this, I forget that. So this and that is object. Apart from buddhi, apart from mind, apart from memory, apart from perception and emotion, what are you? That's how Shankaracharya describes or points towards pure consciousness. Now, this entirety of the objects which appear to pure consciousness, if they are entirely distinct, are they really, is it possible for them to interact? He says, no. Mithya iti bhavitum yuktam. This interaction which we see between consciousness and its object, where are we seeing this interaction? I am this body. I, the consciousness, am this body. Or this body is me. He says, anyonya adhyasa. The mutually superimposed. He says, this should be impossible. And yet it seems to be happening all the time. Therefore, it's false. What should not be possible, yet you're experiencing it, that means there's a falsity involved. Now, which is false? The consciousness false, or is the object false? Am I the awareness? Is this unreal? Or is the body and the world and the mind unreal? And he says, Shankaracharya votes for the consciousness is real and what it experiences is unreal. Why? Because consciousness is primary. It is only to consciousness that everything else appears. So this is a very deep point. This is something that is not at all appreciated in the modern philosophy of mind. This is one of the deep contributions of Advaita Vedanta, which it can give to the modern philosophy of mind. In fact, I was reading in a book, it's by a Professor Evan Thompson. So he talks about Buddhism and Upanishads on Vedanta and the science of consciousness. There he says that the Upanishads are so profound and so important in the history of human thought. He said our history should not be dated from BC and AD. Before Christ and after Anno Domini, it should not be dated like that. Our history, human history, should be dated as before Upanishad and after Upanishad.
I would agree.
And that is the importance. Yes. See, we lack this confidence in our own heritage.
Yes.
But when people from outside did investigate it and with neutral vision, then they begin to see how extraordinary this is. It is matchless. Yes. There is nothing that comes even close to the thought of the Upanishads as presented so rationally and clearly by Shankara and post-Shankara philosophers.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. One more question is, Swamiji had mentioned that Adi Shankaracharya rejected yoga philosophy while adopting some other practices. Could Swamiji further elaborate on how and why Shankara refuted yoga philosophy?
Refuted yoga philosophy means, if you look at the Brahma Sutra Bhashya, so he takes up, the whole style was in order to establish your own system of thought, you had to show how is it better than all other systems of thought. So he does not refute only yoga philosophy, he refutes all other philosophies, the materialists, the Buddhists, the Naiyayikas, Vaisheshikas, the Sankhya, and the Yogas. Now, Sankhya philosophy he refutes at length because he says it's the Pradhana Malla, it's the most powerful wrestler you have to fight with. So if you defeat that one, everything else is defeated. Yoga philosophy is called Samana Tantra. It's a sister philosophy of Sankhya. They share many things together. So Shankara says it's actually in the Brahma Sutras. By these arguments, yoga is also refuted. But from an Advaitic perspective, we accept the meditation techniques of yoga, but not the dualism of yoga. Prakriti, Purusha are two different systems. There are many Purushas, many consciousnesses, and one real Prakriti apart from consciousness, which are interacting. This framework, I would not say Vedanta rejects it, it supersedes it.
Is there time to Swamiji for one last question, Swamiji? It's just
Yes, certainly.
question. Has Adi Shankara refuted, I think it's Bhava Viveka or Bhava Viveka, specifically in any text?
Bhava Viveka has two names actually. It's called Bhava Viveka and some places Bhava Viveka. Okay. So he was a follower of Nagarjuna. He lived about 300-400 years after Nagarjuna and about 300 years before Shankara by our modern system of rating. Anyhow, yes. See, the school of thought Bhava Viveka belonged to is Madhyamaka Buddhism. So Madhyamaka, Vijnanavada, and then Madhyamaka is also known as Shunyavada. Madhyamaka, Shunyavada, Yogachara, Vijnanavada, and the other schools of Buddhism have been refuted at length by Shankaracharya in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad Bhashyam, in the Brahma Sutra Bhashyam, Tarkapada. Not Bhava Viveka by name, but he was only one. Why I mentioned Bhava Viveka was I did not know about the existence of that text. That's the oldest text by opponent of Vedanta, which mentions Vedanta. You see, Vedanta is not often mentioned in the long debate between the Hindu and the Buddhist schools. It's mostly on the Hindu side, it's the Nayayikas and the Purva Mimamsakas and the Sankhyas. And on the other side, various schools of Buddhism, including the Madhyamaka Buddhism. So Vedanta seems to be the latecomer. But I discovered that no, few hundred years before Shankara, before Gaudapada also, here was a prominent Madhyamaka philosopher in India refuting Vedanta. One chapter on, two chapters, one refuting Sankhya, one refuting Vedanta. But there were many other philosophers. All of those systems have been refuted comprehensively by Shankaracharya in his commentaries.
That is wonderful, Swamiji. So much packed in so little time. And one last question. How does Shankara differentiate between matter, mind, and consciousness?
Very simple. In your own experience, whatever you experience as this is matter. So even mind becomes matter. Because if you look at your thoughts, you can say this thought, that thought is a Vedantic thought, non-Vedantic thought, materialistic thought, spiritual thought. Then if you can objectify that, anything that is an object to your consciousness, Drishya, which is an object to consciousness, is matter. Now, this is a very interesting division. We think that world and body is matter, but mind is something different. This is the mind-body dualism of Descartes. According to Vedanta, both body and mind, body, brain, mind, world, all are matter. Not just Advaita Vedanta, Sankhya, every system of Indian thought says that. Sankhya, Nyaya, all of them agree, including mind, is matter. But mind is pervaded directly by consciousness. That's why it seems to be conscious. So in the mind, what we call the mind naturally, right now when we look at the mind, there two things are there. The thought and the awareness. Minus the thought, the awareness becomes the pure subject of the Atman. This is how you differentiate.
Spectacular, Swamiji. Thank you so much. Just on time. We are so lucky to have had Swamiji twice in this 1 month, and we hope to have Swamiji back on Advaita Academy platform in the future.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Swamiji. Really, really a pleasure. Thank you. That was wonderful. We all agree. There were many more questions. I'm sorry I couldn't take all of them for Swamiji. Swamiji also has other engagements.